And that is what we're asking. Don't ever forget that. When these people try to belittle us and try to tell us that we're just silly little conservationists or go away, you bird botherers. We're not bird botherers. We're people who want the law of this land to be upheld. And that's what it's all about. For 60 years, the law of this land has been consistently broken by a privileged few and a few people that like to kill other birds for fun. Its time has stopped, and it's got to stop now. And the man who can help us stop it is the next speaker, Mark Avery. So please give Mark a round of applause. Thank you very much. Hello. Woo. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah? Can you hear me at the back anyway? Okay, got to use this. Thank you very much for coming. I thought I'd reflect a little on how far we've come together. So 2 years ago, on a day very similar to this, apart from the fact it was a bit wetter, we had the first Hen Harrier Day. There were 4 events, but the biggest and the best was here in Derbyshire in the Derwent Valley, where 570 people joined together to protest and to celebrate, to protest against wildlife crime and to celebrate this amazing bird. So that was the first year. There were 4 events that year. Last year there were 7 events. This year there were 12 events. So we're moving forward together. How many of you, is this your first Hen Harrier Day rally? That's very good, because if we don't attract new people every year, we're not going to grow. So thank you very much for coming. Okay, how many of you were part of the sodden 570? Yeah. Well, it's good you haven't all died, because we need you too. Yesterday, quite a few of us actually, I might ask you to put your hands up, quite a few of us were in the deep south at Rainham Marshes at the RSPB Reserve there. How many of you were at Rainham? Oh, they're all behind me. About 15 or so, I think. There were between 500 and 600 people at Rainham yesterday. Chris Packham was there. He did his usual fantastic job, and he asked me to send his best wishes to you. Chris is working incredibly hard, doing all sorts of things at the moment, and getting a lot of grief on social media from shooters. A lot of people getting at the BBC, giving them grief for employing him. He's a great guy, and he said to say hi to you all. So, there is this e-petition that's going around, and we have until the 20th of September, which isn't a long time, but it's a fair time to get from where we are at the moment, which, because one of the delights of Derbyshire is that you've got no phone reception at all when you come here. I can't be exactly sure, but today we're going to get to 75,000 signatures. So we got 6 weeks or so to get from 75,000 to 100,000. And thank you to all of you who are helping with that. If we get to 100,000 signatures, doesn't mean the government's going to ban driven grouse shooting the next day, funnily enough. But we will get a debate in Parliament. And that debate in Parliament will raise the issue even more. Imagine back to when you were standing in the rain 2 years ago. The idea that Parliament could actually debate the future of grouse shooting in this country was miles away. Still might be quite a long way away, but we're getting closer all the time. Every movement for change, every improvement in ecology, in social well-being takes a while. And if you've signed the petition, I bet most of you have, Amanda Anderson hasn't, but most of you have. Then, if you sign that e-petition, you are part of the movement for change, and that change will keep coming and we will make progress. I would hope that if we do get that debate in Parliament, the RSPB, which isn't quite as keen on an absolute ban on driven grouse shooting as some people, they take a while to catch up sometimes, the RSPB, but the RSPB will be briefing MPs in Parliament about the idea of licensing. And that is a good idea. It's not quite as good an idea as banning, but it will mean that there will be MPs debating the future of grouse shooting, and the likely future of driven grouse shooting is not like the past. Things will change because of you lot and about 75,000 others. So you are part of a movement for change. And in this, I think I must be right, that this must be the High Peak constituency here. Yeah. Well, that is the constituency that has produced the second highest total of signatures for the e-petition. Derbyshire, well done you. And I think Derbyshire Dales is in the top 10 as well. So this area is an area where people care and have been motivated. And that's not surprising, really. This is an area where change has happened in the past. This was the area where the right to roam was kicked off in many ways with the Kinder trespass. It took a long time for that protest and that movement to deliver the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000 and whatever it was. So these things take a long time, but the Peak District, I think, is a fulcrum for change. It's because this is a national park, an open area between great conurbations, which is used by people from Sheffield and Manchester and all around. There are a load of people who've cycled here from Sheffield. I admire that. I don't think I'm likely to emulate it, but I do admire that. The fact that the rail system here is so good, it's so that people can come here from the cities and walk and enjoy this place. And it was protests like the Kinder trespass that gave ordinary people the right to enjoy this landscape. We need ordinary people to enjoy this landscape with the wildlife that ought to be in it as well. And I think the thing about getting this message through to the public and decision makers is that although a lot of it is about hen harriers, it's not just about hen harriers. The management of the moors for driven grouse shooting is pretty unsustainable. It leads to increased greenhouse gas emissions. It leads to increased flood risk. It leads to increased water treatment costs. It leads to reduced biodiversity in streams running off the uplands. If you were starting from now with what we know, you would never invent this daft hobby. And that is your measure. If you wouldn't start it now, then why tolerate it in the future? Just because we've grown up with it doesn't mean it's right. There are lots of things that people grew up with which are wrong. I think I've probably told you this story. I've told some of you this story before. Last year, I went down to my local post office in Northamptonshire, and I was putting a copy of my book in the post to Rory Stewart, who was the minister at the time. He's gone now. So I took a copy of my book down to the post office and I had to put it on the scales so it was weighed, and the lady behind the counter said, "Oh, I have to ask you what it is." I said, "It's a book." And she said, "Oh, is it valuable?" I said, "Well, is actually. I wrote it. She said, is it worth more than £20? I said, no, it's not that much. So I was posting a few other copies of this book, and I think out of politeness, she seemed to have to push lots of buttons, but out of politeness she said, so what's the book about? And I said, it's about banning grouse shooting. And she said, quick as a flash, which surprised me. She said, but that's traditional. And it is traditional, but I said to her, well, it is traditional, but it's probably not as traditional as you think it is, because it's only been around for about 150 years in this shape and form we've got it now. And 150 years ago, it was traditional for you, madam, not to have the vote. Because you are a hysterical woman. I didn't say that. But the argument at the time was that women should not get the vote because half of society wasn't well enough equipped emotionally and intellectually to have a full say in how the country was run. That seems ridiculous these days. Most days. And it took 60 years between the start of driven grouse shooting and when women got the vote. And I said to her, when driven grouse shooting started, America was fighting a bloody civil war to end slavery. That had a pretty long tradition too. And I said 150 years ago we were sticking kids up chimneys. That was traditional, to clean them. Just because something is traditional doesn't mean that it's right. Driven grouse shooting is not right. Just because we've been doing the wrong thing for 150 years doesn't mean we have to keep on doing it. Thank you for your support.